Hello everyone, as I'm sure many of you know, at the end of the closed beta, Bandai Namco held a survey to get information on what kinds of players participated in the event, in addition to their thoughts on the game. I myself made sure to fill out the survey, and I hope everyone else who participated did so as well. These survey results will help change Blue Protocol for the better. Recently it was announced that Bandai Namco will be giving feedback on the survey results and future development directions in June. It is exciting to think about what they will have to say, so I thought now would be a good time to look back on the closed beta and talk about my own impressions, as well as speculate on some of the changes that may be coming. The first thing I would like to talk about is the game's graphics. Playing in the closed beta, right from character creation, the art style immediately stands out and pulls players in. The shading and presentation of characters wonderfully replicates an anime kind of style. This is even more apparent during dialogues where character models take the place of 2D illustrations used by minigames. The art direction of the world is also incredibly well done. The environments in the game have a hand-drawn feeling and are truly a joy to explore. The grasslands moving with streaks of wind flowing through the air are beautifully presented. Just looking at one surrounding in the game gives one a sense of fulfillment. One of my favorite locations was the city at night. The streetlights and shops shining through alleyways create a warm and relaxing kind of atmosphere. It made me feel like I was exploring some sort of town overseas. It is no doubt that a great amount of the hype being generated for this game is because of these aesthetics, and they do not disappoint. Another part of the game that impressed me was the story. In particular, the cutscenes in this game are spectacular. Not just because of the art style, but the animation, sounds, and voice acting all bring it to another level. In addition, one's own character also talks. We finally have the technology. While a story about the protagonists losing their memory is all too common, I still found myself attached to the characters and wanting to find out what happens next. People who like anime will definitely find something to enjoy here. Compared to the graphics and the story, other parts of the game didn't feel as refined. That is not to say they are bad, but there is more room for improvement. During the closed beta, I played the Blast Archer and Spellcaster, so I'll be looking at combat from their perspective. Starting with the Blast Archer, my first impressions were good. The game uses an action camera, so aiming is done by moving the reticle with one's mouse. The Blast Archer can use a regular attack by left-clicking, and a dodge attack by right-clicking. The distance of the dodge can further be increased by putting points into the skill tree later. There's also a standard dodge roll that all classes can perform in the game, but having the dodge roll on the right-click really made movement feel like a part of the archer's class. Blast Archer also has the ability to weave special attacks in between the regular attack chain. Depending at what point in the chain one holds down the attack button, a different type of special attack can be activated. Holding down the attack button immediately allows the archer to give a speed boost to all nearby allies. Holding down the attack button at the second stage of the regular attack chain shoots 5 arrows out in an arc. And finally, holding down the attack button at the third stage of the chain shoots out an area of effect earth attack. These types of options allow one to put a little more thought into how they want to do regular attacks. As for tactical skills, the initial Q skill is called Strike Arrow, and shoots an arrow with increased damage. It can be upgraded later to charge up an attack before shooting. The E skill is called Stampede Arrow, which shoots out seeking arrows at the enemy. It can be upgraded later to increase the number of arrows, as well as adding poison or piercing to the arrows. The R skill is called Lethal Shower, and calls down a rain of arrows for an area of effect damage over time. It can be upgraded later to charge a skill to increase its radius and damage. The C skill is called Healing Arrow, which heals an area over time. It can also be upgraded for the ability to charge it, increasing its effect and radius. Finally, the Tab skill, or Ultimate, is called Mortal Gravity. It creates something like a black hole to suck enemies in towards the center of an area. Alternative skills that can be unlocked later include Hypnoblast, a skill to put enemies to sleep, Negative Resonance, a skill to spread conditions from one enemy to nearby enemies, Dust Force, a skill that does area of effect damage over time and increases the effects of conditions. And finally, Hunter Spirit, which decreases cooldown of regular and tactical skills for both oneself and teammates if upgraded. Overall, the Archer felt like something of a mix between a support and damage role, and was enjoyable to play. Some things I would like to see improved are UI elements for team buffs and enemy debuffs. It is currently difficult to see how long the duration is and when they will run out. In addition, once my Archer speed buff went away, I didn't seem to be able to cast it on myself again immediately. It seems like there is some sort of downtime, but I had no clue to how long that was, so it would be nice to have some sort of indicator to show me. Next up, I would like to talk about the Spellcaster, a class that left me with some more mixed impressions. Let me first do a short summary of the Spellcaster. The Spellcaster, like the Blast Archer, is a ranged attacker. The Spellcaster can use regular attacks by left-clicking, in addition to holding down a direction during the third attack to allow them to use a special attack to knock back the enemy, slow down enemies in the area, or give oneself the quick charge buff. The right-click on the Spellcaster recharges their EP, which is used for their tactical skills. The unique thing about the Spellcaster is that all their elemental tactical skills have no cooldown and require only EP to use. So the Spellcaster finds themselves balancing between using skills and recharging their EP. Looking at the tactical skills themselves, the Q skill is called Fire Blast, and like its name, shoots a fireball at the enemy. Upgrading it allows it to be charged to increase its damage. The E skill is called Lightning, and shoots 3 piercing bolts of lightning from the user's staff. It can be upgraded for the ability to charge it and increase the number of lightning bolts. The R skill is called Blizzard, and creates an icy wind at the location to damage enemies. In addition, being an ice type skill, it is able to slow enemies who take extended damage. Upgrading the skill allows one to increase its damage and range. The C skill is called Concentration, which allows a caster to slowly regenerate EP over time. It can be upgraded to increase its duration, decrease its cooldown, as well as give the ability to heal the user over time or immediately recover EP on use. The Spellcaster's ultimate skill is called Meteor Inferno, and is one of the flashiest skills in the game, calling down meteors to strike enemies at a given location. Alternative skills that can be unlocked include Flame Grenade, an area of effect fire damage skill, Thunder Mines, a slow seeking ball of electricity, Frigid Crush, a heavy damaging area of effect skill, and Follow Bullet, a skill which creates seeking engram bullets to damage enemies after using a tactical skill. All of the alternative elemental skills can also be upgraded for the ability to charge them up to a level 3 attack. Overall, the Spellcaster felt like it did a lot more damage than the Blast Archer. However, especially at early levels, I found myself only using the Fire Blast skill to deal damage aside from occasionally using regular attacks to finish off an enemy. This was for a number of reasons. First of all, the Lightning skill barely did any damage compared to Fire Blast. If it had some sort of immediate stun, I might have found myself using it more, but as it was, there was no situation where I found myself wanting to use it. I did not get a chance to upgrade it, so maybe it gets better later on, but there definitely should be more incentive to use it early on. Its alternative skill, Thunder Mines, was much more useful, and once I got that I never switched back. Next up was the Blizzard skill. While playing solo, I did not find myself using the skill as much, because enemies would quickly leave the damage radius and not be slowed. Now I know in a group setting where enemies don't move as much and a greater number of enemies can be clumped up, the ice skills as well as Flame Grenade can find more use. As for the tactical skills, Concentration and Follow Bullet, I did not have any issues with them, and they both complemented the Spellcaster's kit. Because of the way the EP system works and there being no cooldown for elemental spells, one is just incentivized to continuously use their most damaging skill. This can lead to some dull gameplay, especially at lower levels, where all the spellcaster does is constantly spam Fire Blast, despite having other damaging skills available. This EP system also leads to the next issue. Besides giving oneself quick charge, I found little reason to use regular attacks. Tactical elemental skills have no cooldown and deal the most damage, so unless an enemy is nearly dead, it was just a better strategy to charge back up my EP and use more Fire Blast to kill the enemy than waste my time with low damage regular attacks. Perhaps if regular attacks also recharged EP, I would have found myself weaving skills between attacking. I would definitely like to see more incentive to use a wider variety of skills while playing the spellcaster. For example, if skills had more immediate status effects, had more utility effects, or if after using one skill, another skill could be comboed into it, there could be more diversity to skill use and less repetitive gameplay. The follow bullet skill is something like this, but I would like to see more reasons to switch between the elemental skills while fighting. Another problem I had with the spellcaster was the lack of self-healing. I know at level 30, concentration can be spec'd to give regeneration, but that does not help when one is leveling up. Lack of self-healing is more of a problem in this game compared to others because there's no natural health regeneration. This means that unless one relies on other people to heal them, one is required to take healing battle imagine or potions with them. Another thing that I would like to touch on briefly is the right-click EP recharge of the spellcaster. Now perhaps it was just me or my mouse, but occasionally I would be holding down right-click and I would not move into my EP recharge state. I would cast a skill and then right-click, but nothing would happen. If other people are also experiencing this issue, I hope it gets fixed. The last issue I had with the spellcaster was that I did not like that everything I did locked me in place. I understand that this was probably a design decision where a spellcaster can deal damage at the cost of mobility. However, Blue Protocol is being marketed as an action game. Despite that, use a regular attack and you are rooted. Use a tactical skill and you are rooted. Charge back up your EP and you are rooted. I understand possibly keeping Spellcaster in place while recharging EP, but would it be that game breaking to allow the class to move while attacking or casting skills? Being able to move while attacking may even incentivize the player to actually attack as a spellcaster. Finally, I believe it would be a more enjoyable class to play if the player was able to move more freely. All in all, despite all of this, I still did find the spellcaster enjoyable. However, I would definitely like to see the spellcaster change to incentivize the player to use a wider variety of skills and regular attacks. Next, I would like to talk about dungeons in the game. Overall, I found dungeons as part of the story enjoyable. However, returning back to them as a group was underwhelming. The main problem with group dungeons was that everything on the way to the boss, except enemies that needed to be killed to proceed, was ignored. The enemies that were fought also died very quickly. This made the dungeons feel like they didn't have any substance at all. Players would just rush forward as fast as possible and the dungeons would be over in a few minutes. Because of the way dungeons currently work, all the rewards are attached to defeating the boss, so players have no reason to kill anything else. Personally, I would like to see dungeons scale better with players and potentially add rewards or some reason to kill other enemies. Now I understand that being able to complete dungeons quickly means that weapons can be crafted in less time, which could be a good thing. However, the current lack of substance in the dungeons leads to a less enjoyable experience and makes me worried about how that could affect in-game content. Another thing that slightly worried me about dungeons was the lack of any group coordination needed. While I can understand early dungeons being easy, I would like to see content that calls for groups to work together in order to complete them. During the closed beta, the game even went to block chat during dungeons, which makes me worried that we may not see much content requiring group coordination in the future. The raids during the closed beta were fun, but I also thought they lacked much thought to be completed. For the most part, all people had to do was just to keep attacking the boss, occasionally attack the ads, and use the cannons if they felt like it. The raid itself felt lackluster compared to something like Guild Wars 2, a game which also has a similar no holy trinity design philosophy. World boss battles in Guild Wars 2 have multiple phases and require people to split up into groups and coordinate in order to defeat the boss. If people do not work together, there are many bosses which cannot be defeated. Let's take a look back at the raid boss in Blue Protocol. There are cannons which can freeze the boss and other enemies. What if the boss would occasionally charge up an incredibly damaging attack that could only be stopped by using the cannons? What if the cannons had health and could be temporarily disabled if they took too much damage? What if the additional monster spawns would attempt to destroy the cannons? This now leads players to act and think according to the situation, which in turn leads to a more interesting gameplay. Now, I'm not saying my cannon solution is perfect, it is just an example. However, I would like to see both dungeons and raids require the players to think a little bit more. My experience exploring the field was fine for the most part. I enjoyed the environments and the fact that the game encouraged attacking enemies with other players. Issues I had were more minor and I believe have been touched upon by many others. First was the bag system. At the current bag size of 30 slots, the bag filled up rather quickly. This meant one had to keep returning between the town and field zones. I have to say I did enjoy the fact that all items would automatically be sent to storage, and I did not find the game loop of going between the town and field itself a problem exactly, but the lack of slots in the bag made it quite a repetitive experience. I heard that in the alpha version of the game, one's bag slot was 100, and items would stack. So this has led to some speculation about bag size being one of the ways the game will be monetized. This leads to a couple other points I wanted to talk about. Perhaps if there were more teleportation locations in the world, or if the mount could be used longer, a small bag wouldn't feel like such a burden. The mount itself felt slightly disappointing because of how quick it would run out. If the mount slowly regained energy while stored or could be upgraded by crafting, it may not have felt as bad. The next thing I would like to talk about are field bosses. Being able to see a mark on the map and join in when other players take down a more powerful foe is exciting, but the field bosses did not seem to put up much resistance. Before I got my mount, I would also try to run to the field bosses, but they would die before I could even get there. In addition, while fighting them I would rarely take much damage. Granted, I was still in the early areas, but it feels like the field bosses could be changed or balanced to make it a little bit more interesting. Next, I would like to talk about the field markers that can be found to reveal clouds around the map. While searching for these can be fun, they did feel a little lacking. I'm going to be making another comparison to Guild Wars 2, but in that game there is something called vistas. Interacting with a vista gives a cinematic aerial view around that point of the map. Perhaps combining something like this with the map markers in Blue Protocol could make them more engaging and make the player feel like they are actually seeing that area of the map for the first time and clearing away the clouds. I wasn't able to craft everything during my time in the closed beta, but my impressions were positive. I enjoyed being able to craft new weapons for myself, but most of all, I liked the idea behind the Battle Imagine system. Everyone being able to summon monsters to use their abilities is an interesting idea, and a good way to add diversity to some builds. I could see lots of people experimenting with different monster combinations, and some other people just using monsters they like. And while I didn't get a chance to try it, it looked like there was a fusion system to combine the Battle Imagines with weapons, which opens up even more possibilities. This is one part of the game that I look forward to trying out more and I hope is expanded upon in the future. One issue I had while not directly related with crafting is the fact that after making and equipping the Inner Imagines, one has to manually click a button to raise their adventurer rank. It just seems like there could be a better way to implement a rank up feature. However, I did like how Inner Imagines took the place of armor stats found in most games. This meant that players were free to wear what they think looks best, which I think is fitting for this style of game. For the most part, I was fine with the UI, but I felt like some improvements could be made to the black bar at the bottom of the screen. First of all, despite having such amazing graphics in the game, the choice to have an opaque black bar cover that up seems odd. Next, it was hard to tell what buttons to press for the hotbar. Looking up button bindings, one can learn what to press, but having no indicator on the UI feels like an oversight. In addition, only dungeons making use of the F1 through F4 keys felt like a waste. Since items can't be used in dungeons anyways, couldn't F1 through F4 hotbar slots be used for field items when outside of the dungeons? While maybe not directly related to UI, I also wanted to comment on the chat feature in the game. For those of you who don't know, once chat is open, the camera can only be rotated with arrow keys. Why is this? I don't know, it felt very unnatural. Wouldn't being able to rotate the camera by holding down right click make more sense? Perhaps I was missing something, but the current implementation of the chat camera felt strange. One other thing I was disappointed about during the closed beta was the lack of widescreen support. I know people that have widescreen monitors are in the minority, but since the art style of the game is so breathtaking, I was hoping to be able to see the world on my own widescreen monitor. However, widescreen support was listed along with many other commonly requested features as part of a survey question. This is the survey question that asked people to choose up to 5 things they wanted to see added to the game. I expect all these things are being considered for development, and it's just a matter of what takes priority. I personally chose these 5 with the circle next to it, although there were more than 5 things I wanted to request. If I were to fill it in again, I think I would replace one of my options with an emphasis on cooperation in battle. What are some of the things you would like to see from this list? While there were a lot of small issues with the closed beta, they didn't feel like things that couldn't be fixed. Despite all of that, I still had a great time playing the game and wished I could have played more. However, I'm also happy the closed beta ended because now Bandai Namco can work on improving the game based on the feedback they got. Most of the points I raised in this video I also wrote down in the survey, and I'm sure many other players hoping to improve the game gave a lot of feedback as well. Now I'm looking forward to seeing how the game evolves going forward. I can't wait for the next test to be held and to see what has changed.